I believe other people can see us now.
All right.
Hold on a moment. Okay, I think we're good. Levels are good. In fact, YouTube just sent me a notification that we're live.
Awesome.
All right. Okay, if you're watching this live, we're recording this for an audio podcast that will go out on the 30th. We're just streaming it for fun. So we'll just say that really quickly for anybody that watch. Well, nobody's watching live now. Now it looks like people are coming on live, but or if you're watching this later, if you're watching this later on YouTube or something, and it's just raw like this. So we're just going to record this. It's going to go out as an audio podcast for Photofocus. So just search Photofocus in your podcast app and subscribe. Okay. And for the real audio that we'll use for the recording, welcome to the Q&A show for Photofocus. My name is Ron Pepper, and I'm here with Rob Moroto. How's it going, Rob?
Hello, everybody. Everything's going great. You know, school's out, kids are out, and oh my God, what are we going to do for the next 2 months?
And just for on the audio record on the podcast, no one's going to know that we're up doing this like night owls after the kids are in bed.
Of course, you know, and I will admit that, you know, it's a stressful time ahead of us, and so I am self-medicating myself with a little bit of a hazy IPA.
So Rob does the stressful summer, and I do the relaxed summer. We relax and do stuff.
Nice. And before we forget, you know what? I gotta say, this episode of the Q&A show is sponsored by Tamron. Check out their new 28-75 G2 lens for the Sony E-mount cameras. Now, we're gonna talk about this later. 28-75. That's a unique length
Zoom
there.
Focal lengths, yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's usually 24-70. But,
right, but
you know what?
It's a full frame. It's a full frame. It's intended for full frame camera, yeah?
It is. And so,
okay.
I you know what? I think so, right? And it features a improved close-up performance. So, strangely enough, you know, we get this script that they're like, oh, well, something like this. And whenever we look at it, it's like, oh, it's improved close-up performance. And, you know, I do a lot of macro stuff when I'm bored. Well, not bored, just when I find something interesting, I like to do a little bit of close-up stuff. So I'm always interested in seeing, oh, well, how close can you actually be? And so I went to their site to see how close you can actually get, and it's pretty good. You can get up to around 7 inches before it what is it? The minimal object distance.
Oh, the MOD, sure.
Yeah, right. From like how close your lens can be to the object. Like that's not for 25. What was that? What was that number again? The
28 to 75.
28 to 75. That's pretty darn close. So yeah, at a 75, yeah, 7 inches is really close. So yeah, interesting. And I'd be really interested to see how much you can tweak it with that lens utility that they've got.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. If I was a Sony guy, I'd be excited. I've used Tamron before, and I've been very happy with it. And yeah, maybe they'll give us a loaner of a. I would love to get a loaned macro lens because I don't have a true macro lens right now, which I really should.
Yeah. No, I've got one macro lens, which it's cool. It's got a lens hood on it that the MOD on that lens is the length of that hood. So you can put your hood onto whatever your object is, and that's as close as you can get.
I'm going to suggest that some smart people make a hood that has lights in it, so you can do what you said, put it right up to it.
Right? Like just like a rim light, that just like one of those, podcaster lights, right? Just really small.
Maybe that's a horrible idea, but maybe not.
Who knows?
Let's
But yes,
let's-
this is sponsored by Tamron. Thank you, Tamron, as always. We love you and love your products as well.
let me really quickly. We're going to talk more about things that have to do with HDR later because of the questions we have. But also sponsoring is Photomatics for high dynamic range photography. And since we have a couple of questions that fall into perfect HDR situations, I will mention more about it later as we go. So let's start off with our first question, which is going to be, all right, remember, a lot of the reasons that Rob and I do this and other people come on is just personal. It's for fun. We want to do things that are fun for us. So I've been asking for audio questions whenever possible. And we don't get too many by audio. We get questions that are written in, but we got an audio one here that, as I play it, don't think you're listening to the wrong show. I'll explain.
Hola, tengo una Nikon D80 y quiero consejos de cómo hacer que mis fotos de paisajes se vean mejor y qué tan grandes las puedo imprimir.
Rob, do you want to start?
No.
So, if that came through okay, right?
That did come through okay. I just can't understand it. Unfortunately, I can do French or English or Japanese, and that's about it.
Well, when we get a Japanese one, we're going to throw it on there. Anyway, so it's a great question for a Q&A show. It's very simple and basic kind of that a lot of people want to know. So I thought let's just start out with that. That comes from Raquel in somewhere in South America, apparently. She didn't want to tell us any more. But basically, she's asking, she has a Nikon D80, which is a bit of an older camera, but it's good. And she's asking, what tips do we have to improve landscapes? And then she also asked, how big can I print them? So I just for fun, because I'm kind of into Spanish and I'm kind of I'm intermediate level, and it came in so clear and clean, better than the English questions we get. So anyway, Raquel, I'll tell you what, we're going to be talking about some different things that'll fit right into what you're asking. But let me just start out with saying that Nikon D80, I actually had a D70. Was my first digital SLR was a D70, the predecessor right before the D80. So I think I know about that one. So it's not new. I think it's not a new camera, but if she's worried about it being an older camera, I wouldn't. It's unless you're a super pro and you have a specific reason for a specific camera, but it's going to do a good job. Now, back then, I had to look it up. It's a 10 megapixel only.
10.2. It's got 3,872 by 2,592 pixels size, which is, it's not big. Let's face it. Some of our like the new iPhone is a 12 megapixel camera, right? So,
well,
this is smaller.
That's the thing. That's the thing about these cameras, though. That's a crop sensor camera. It's not a full frame, but it's not as small as an iPhone sensor. So it is it's on the bigger end of the spectrum of sensors. It's not a small one from it's not a micro four thirds. It's not a small sensor from a phone. It's a good sensor, but it is kind of older tech. It's the CCD sensor, which I remember when I started using the newer ones, the CMOS sensors. I remember noticing a very noticeable difference. I almost switched to Canon because they had CMOS. Okay, so basically, solid camera. Just be careful not to use it in real low light, maybe, but you're going to be fine with it, and it'll print, I'm sure, as big as you want, unless you're trying to print huge. You can make posters and stuff. You're not going to be able to have super close viewing distance, but who does? A poster or something's not for that. But I think for all the normal use, you'd be able to print your 8x10s and bigger. Yeah. So,
no, honestly, so one of the things that I used to do when I was doing some landscapes, I wanted a bigger picture. I started doing this with a what's it called? A tilt shift lens. And with the tilt shift lens, you could shift the lens into various areas. And so I would shift it into the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right.
Stitch them.
And then stitch them to make a bigger image. Now, that's one way of doing it, but you can also, as you know, Ron, you can take a camera with a 10 megapixel sensor, put a longer lens on it, and stitch and using the techniques that you use to make a 360, and stitch a much larger image. And so, depending on the amount of time you have and your patience level, you could stitch a very large image and then make as big of a image as you want. The big thing with posters that I found, like I do a bit of art stuff, and whenever I print anything, I like to go no less than around 200 DPI. So
Right.
if I'm doing 200 DPI, then it just becomes a calculation, mathematical calculation, right? You look at the number of pixels that you need going left to right, top to bottom, and then you do your math. Once you do that, then you know how many images you will have to stitch. You know how many images you will have to you'll know how many images you'll need to stitch. There you go.
I think you're really getting in the weeds with the technical stuff.
But
the idea would be right if you really wanted to make cover an entire huge wall in your house or something with some art, and yeah, you could stand back, and this gets into her question. She mentioned landscape. So like if it's a big landscape, you can overlap the images, just turning the camera a bit, try to overlap them by like 25-30% of the images overlap.
Yeah.
And for those that are really technical, you get into all this. Like for me, the 360 person, you work really hard to get the camera in the perfect position for rotating. But if your mountains and the landscape has a far away MOD, the distance from the things are farther away, that doesn't matter. So you just shoot away and get a bunch of cover, and you can just stitch that right in Lightroom pretty automatically at this point. So that's a good point. But again, I just wouldn't worry about the resolution, because we have some other questions that come up that we can touch on this. In fact, let's do that.
Okay.
These
actually, you know what? One last afterthought that just came to mind. I remember from when I was a marketing manager. I was a marketing manager for condo developments, and I remember we were doing billboards. And one of the things that they have is a calculation of how much DPI you need based on the viewing distance. So there's been, if you see a billboard on the highway, yes, your eye is around, probably around 50 to 100 feet away from that billboard. And therefore, because of that, they only need a DPI of maybe, 15, because they can just blow it up. It can be pixelated.
Pixels, yeah.
And it'll still look okay when you're viewing it from 50 to 100 feet away. So I guess you know what, you're absolutely right. If you're not going to be looking at a poster, around 3 inches from your face, like you would with, say, a actual printed 4x6. So yeah, I guess you're right. You could do it.
It's just like anything on the wall or on the billboard. If you get right close to it, it's not going to look the same. If you go to see some famous Monet paintings or something at the the Louvre or whatever. If they let you, if you can get really close, it's these huge brush strokes that don't look like a painting, but you step back and it does. So yeah, that's why the resolution doesn't really matter. And these days, Frank, a lot of times, the printer will say just 180 DPI is enough. That means dots per inch. So how many pixels per inch? That's the calculation. In case I'm not sure if you mentioned that before, but it's the dots per inch or PPI, pixels per inch. That's what they're saying there is like 120 dots per inch, and or 180 I think is about as low as you would normally go, and you can even get away with less depending. And it depends on your use. Are you a professional? Are you just doing stuff for fun? Are you, I'm the pro photographer that used to take all my personal stuff to Costco to print. It's just the easiest thing, and they don't do it anymore. But for just personal things, and why not? It's easy.
Right.
In fact, that rolls into Elaine from Black Forest, Colorado. Wait, Black Forest, Colorado Springs. So that must be like some twin cities there in Colorado. Sent us a question with many questions in the question. So, and the reason I'm just kind of moving on quickly is that a lot of these apply, like the stuff we were talking about kind of applies. Like she already mentioned what about size. In fact, I'll just read what she said. Mm-hmm. How do you prepare a raw photo for printing? I mean, that's a big question, isn't it? For example, how do you choose the best? So, okay, how do you choose the best? I wonder if that's like, how do you do your culling? You know, culling, like getting rid of the bad stuff. I'm not sure if that's what she means, but like going through quickly on Lightroom and, you know, I give like everything, usually what I do is I give everything 1 star automatically. And then I just reject or take away the star. And then, so I rank them one as I go through. Yeah. And then just eliminate the ones that don't keep up, that don't get what do you call that kind of voting where you vote for the ones you want in order, and then the lowest ones get knocked off, and then you do it again until there's one.
Oh my God, my poli-sci days are way behind me.
Right. So it's something like that. If you're looking for a way to really cull through fast, there's a pro tip is download Photo Mechanic, because it doesn't take time to load previews and stuff for some reason. It uses the previews, I guess, that are built into because you know, every raw photo has a preview built in. And so, like, I don't like waiting for Lightroom to import all my images. It takes too long to make all the previews. So pros will use Photo Mechanic to zoom through and just get rid of, you know, you're out of focus, and at least the bad ones. Yeah.
Well, the other program that we should probably plug here is Mylio, right?
Oh yeah, we talked about it on the last show, but I haven't got a chance to try it yet.
Yeah, no, Mylio sounds like that'd be perfect. Right? Because you can put all your RAWs on it, and then while you're out anywhere and you're bored, and instead of, you know, listening to politicians on Twitter, you can go onto Mylio and say, oh, I like this one, I like this one, I like this, I hate this one, and start culling on that side. So that might be a good way too. But so I do have one more tip on that subject though, and that is, I get this with my real estate photographer guys, where they say, well, which of these two pictures is better? And which should I send to my client? And what usually happens for me is when I say, if you're comparing two things, take a look at the photo and be very perceptive and mindful about what happens to you. So for example, you'll look at one picture of a living room, and then if your eye darts to the left, that means that the center or the pull, the focus of that image is to the left. So you shot it too much to the right. And if you compare the two images, whichever image doesn't do that, whichever image lets you stay focused in the middle and doesn't make your eye wander, is probably the better image. And so something like that. Take a look at your image and then just feel how the photo makes you or your eyes move, and I think that's a good one there.
A lot of it is that immediate emotional reaction to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some images where you look at it, it's like, this is fantastic, and other ones where it's like, but you don't know why, and that's why I'm like, be mindful, like this whole mindfulness thing, right? Like understand how you're feeling, try and dissect it, try and describe it. So.
Yeah, it's a good exercise to go back either through your own photos or other photos and try to think about what makes it attractive, what part of the design principle, what part of, you know, is it fitting in with our human need with the golden ratio, you know, what is it that really makes it work, and try to dissect those. Yeah. Hey, even though we're doing this late at night, it's not late at night everywhere, but we got a comment. Isan, I don't know. First, make sure it's sharp. So when you're culling, make sure it's sharp. That's one of the first things to do, is get rid of the blurry stuff. Then check exposure, unless it's part of the bracket. Yeah, I mean, so he's got a process. Has a process that goes in order. And I agree. is
Yeah.
getting out those out of focus ones. The first thing is what I do. 'Cause, in fact, it depends what I'm doing. Like
Definitely.
the kind of work that Rob and I do, you and I do, there's not a lot of out of focus, I don't think, because it's pretty static. But if I go shoot like sports or something, then yeah, I get a lot of out of focus stuff.
Yeah, no, I was just doing an event and the same thing. It's like I've got my camera set to eye focus, but the problem is that sometimes it catches the wrong eye, and it's like not.
Well, it's down to one eye or the other.
Yeah. So
Wow.
okay, so well, no, if you're shooting at an f1.2, having the person turn slightly sideways and they catching the wrong eye will make the photo not work.
Huh.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a very narrow or shallow depth of field right there.
Oh, it is. It is. And it's just it's so painful when you get that perfect shot, but it's focused on the wrong eye.
Oh, well, here's your solution on the screen.
Yeah.
Z9 will fix that, it says.
Oh yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll just run out and get one.
Yeah, and an A7 IV would fix that too.
He probably knows about that email we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Oh.
No,
Well,
exactly.
That's some of these things. Okay, just kind of back to the questions rather than waxing on. When Elaine says, "How do you prepare a raw photo for printing?" It's one of those things where we could talk all day. But what I wanted to mention is that the raw photo is just what your camera takes in, and it's raw data. So there's all manner of ways of creating a photo out of it, and that just depends on what are you shooting and what some of the basics though is I think in terms now of like Adobe Camera Raw, because I use Lightroom for the most part, but any editing software will have these things where my basic things is I go in and I adjust for the blacks and the whites, so you have that nice pop on both ends, and then from there it really depends, man. There's so many things, and we did get asked for tips about landscape, so we can wrap that in and say, like few of us, I think we mentioned a few of us even mentioned about the focus first, and make sure that you get the part that you want in focus, either all of it or the intended part in focus is indeed tack sharp. That's one of the things for sure. And dynamic range is another one, which lets me bring up what I mentioned earlier about if you don't have the dynamic range, Rob and I here, and apparently Isan, who's been in, are all thinking in terms of bracketing, and that many times will solve landscape problems with the dynamic range, where if you're shooting a sunset and that's bright still and the foreground is dark, and you might want that silhouette, you might want to capture brackets which let you take images at different speeds so that nothing is either too bright or too dark, and that's where the Photomatics comes in and helps you put it together. And so the bracketing is one thing that with those, like for instance with the D80, the D80, that has I meant to say that did come with a message that said responding in English is fine, so it's not like but Raquel, if you have follow-up questions, let me know, and I can read and write pretty well in Spanish, better than talk. So
I can drink in Spanish, but that's about it.
so that bracketing does solve where, like, some of those older cameras or smaller sensor cameras have less dynamic range. So that's a way of getting around that. Where the newer cameras are always getting better and better dynamic range. So for instance, my camera has to be a pretty extreme situation, like an interior, before I need bracketing. So that's one of those tools. But bracketing and HDR is a tool only, in my opinion. It's only for when it's needed. You shouldn't try to use it all the time.
Yeah. Now, getting back to that raw question, though, I've got, it's interesting. It makes me think of some of the discussions that are going on with a lot of Fujifilm shooters, because one of the problems with, say, Lightroom is that it doesn't actually process Fuji raw photos very well, and they're not sharp. And so if you take a Fujifilm RAW file and say put it through Capture One. It's, oh my god, so much better. And it is a lot sharper, and it's truer form to what the you know how you can shoot RAW plus JPEG, right, on most cameras.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about RAW plus JPEG is, think about it this way: the manufacturer has chosen the best way to process their RAW files into a JPEG. And so when you do that, you can see exactly how the manufacturer wanted that RAW to be processed. It might not be how you wanted it in terms of colors or in depth, stuff like that, but in terms of sharpness, that is probably going to be the best sharp image that you're going to get, which is straight out of how the manufacturer wanted it. And so you like going into actually, this reminds me of a photographer that I met, Christian what's his name? Christian Bogner from Canmore, Alberta, and he has this way of shooting where he shoots pretty much JPEG in his Nikon all the time, but he's got different settings for how he wants his JPEG to look on his camera. So he's got it so that everything is being processed on his camera, and he also has how do I put it? He also has it so that when he does, I think this is how he does it. He takes that Nikon software that comes with the camera and uses that to first pre-process his RAWs to JPEG. So, because his thought behind that was the manufacturer knows best as to how to process their own RAW files.
Yeah. Do I have audio?
You do have audio. You do. You just went a little quiet on me, and I feel like I'm over talking now. I apologize for that.
I think I have a crackly noise going on.
You did, and you just dropped around 10 decibels in volume. So hopefully we can.
Yeah. How about now?
Oh, wait a sec.
Same?
Ison says that it is me that is crackling. Okay.
Thank goodness.
No, it's not you, it's me. It's always me.
Okay. I sound okay, Ison? As far as the volume goes? See, darn it, now I have to edit this.
Yes, you do. You do. This is the lovely thing about having a live stream and then having people watching us and to be able to, guide us. And we were having issues before because I had my VPN on, and well, that didn't work. Turn that off.
Take a timestamp 2809 to come back and fix it.
Yep.
I don't know if I can get the crackling out.
Well.
All right.
Anyways.
Yeah. So while you were talking, I was taking a chance to see if I was crackling, but I completely agree, and this is a point I love to make whenever I'm talking photography. Everybody asks something to remember about shooting JPEG plus RAW. All it means. So people say, should I shoot JPEG or RAW? Well, every camera shoots RAW. It's just the sensor takes in the RAW data. So if you're shooting JPEG, all it's doing is immediately converting it to JPEG and discarding the RAW. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So if you shoot JPEG and RAW, it just doesn't discard the RAW. And I love doing that because if I can use the JPEGs, great. If I made a mistake or I just need to pull something else out that the RAW helps me with, then I use it. So I do like doing that, and that applies for like real estate, where if I can get away with using JPEGs, I will. And I couldn't agree more that the manufacturers probably have the best way of converting their RAWs. And I learned from working closely with software people that camera manufacturers don't give out the information about converting the RAW. It has to be all reverse engineered, and I'm just was just shocked about that. Because I do know that when I've used Canon DPP, what does that stand for? Digital Photography Professional. That's their software that comes with the camera.
Yep.
and I've used it on some projects where I was working with somebody else. We had Canon cameras, and oh my God, batch converting and doing simple comes out beautiful, and I do like it better than Adobe. Capture One, you were mentioning that, right? I was a little distracted. I'm sorry. You use the Capture One, and I assume you're using the Fuji specific Capture One.
I am. Well, no, I got the full suite just because I wanted, for my company, I wanted to test whether or not it had better output for the Canon lineup, the Nikon lineup, the Sony, and the Fuji, all of it. So that, we always want to be able to create the best quality. So testing new software is, part of my job.
It was funny, since we started doing podcasts, I realized, I was doing it years ago, and I was always so very well informed about all the cameras and all the gear, all the software, because I was doing so much teaching and working with other people, and I would do projects where we would use someone else's gear. And I always knew, like, I was thinking to myself earlier when you told me that you said that the D80 you said exactly the number of width and height of pixels. 10 years ago, or a few more, I guess, before 2020, I could have told you that from memory.
Yeah.
And I can't now at all. I couldn't even remember. I had to look it up. But those, going through the technical things are fun again, because now I have a kind of a reason to look up some of these details, and they're easy to look up. Anybody can Google this stuff. Just look up like whatever camera you have, put in the D850 sensor, and it'll give you all sorts of information. You can learn all about backlit sensors and cool stuff, So
I know all the cool kids out there know, like, they know all the outfielder names of every single Yankee that was out there. But here we're talking about, I remember what the megapixel was for the EOS Kiss, whatever.
Who played shortstop for the Blue Jays in 19
exactly.
Threw in a Canada reference there for you.
Thank you.
So, choosing the best print size, that's kind of an easy one. Because
how big's your wall?
Elaine mentioned which photo print company, and I don't really have a good recommendation on it because there are quite a few. I use SmugMug for a lot of work. It's not cheap, but if you use it, if you're professional, it has a lot of features that are worth it. But if you don't use something like that, Bayphoto.
Well, no. Hey, Ron, I'm going to stop you right there.
Shoot.
Okay. So for anyone listening, if you are going to do anything print-wise, do this. Go to your local camera store. Ask if they know a local printer that knows what they're doing. Why? Because there's so many guys out there that buy these really expensive printers, and they actually need to be printing stuff every day so that those print heads don't get, it's a pretty much a big ass inkjet printer with hundreds of heads on it that could get easily clogged. So they need to keep on printing. And so by using your local printers, you're supporting local, right? And you're supporting other artists. And that's going to go a whole lot farther than using... Do you guys have Vistaprint down there?
Yeah, I think it's a worldwide thing, isn't it?
Right? Okay, so instead of using your Vistaprints or your SmugMugs or anyone else, go local first.
Hey, I'm with you. I'm with you, Isan. Keep letting us know about the volume. I'm with you. If you got local, by all means. I used to use Costco. No, I'm kidding. Frankly, I don't print very often. So, in fact, a lot of times if I do, I love the fact that SmugMug handles all that for me. I don't want to do, and I know that's different. A lot of people that do, say, weddings and stuff, they have sales sessions or sit down. Well, you sit down and you go through and order prints, and that's just not my business. And so,
yeah.
Hey, we'll have other people on who do that more on the roundtable show, or if we get certain questions about subjects I don't know much about and Rob doesn't know much about, well, I'll look around for somebody to pop on with us. But sorry, we're going to be pretty general with the print company. But I do like the idea of going local by all means.
Yeah.
And again, I also really like having being able to upload the photos, having a system that they really take care of everything. They really do. Take care of the shipping. They take a cut of it, of course, and then that works out really nicely.
Essentially the Amazon of print, which is, we all have that, I hate Amazon, but I use Amazon, right? kind of thing.
Does
So
Amazon do photo printing now?
Oh, I hope not.
Well, I don't know why they wouldn't by now, but
they'll dominate the world. But it's interesting because, I do have friends who used to be photographers who have now gone into doing specialty things. Like, there's a lot of photographers that have gone into teaching, and then there's a lot of photographers that have gone into doing fine art prints, doing classes, events, excursions and stuff. And one of the photographers that I used to listen to and enjoy shooting with was Royce Howland, and he's got a beautiful print studio in Calgary, and his prints are fantastic. So you'll always find somebody that's doing print.
Well, I can give one of my usual, I don't know, is it a disclaimer or what, is that every photographer is different and good at things and bad at things, and hey, people that are artists that create great art, they want to print their own because they want to get it right, and I'm all for it. It's just not me. I wish I wish it were. I wish I were better at that. But that's we all have our areas, right? And so yeah, I just you ask 10 photographers, you get 10 answers, and it's one of those things.
Exactly. Like even in my other buddy Rob Ryan of Render DC, he's out in Saskatoon. And he's doing a whole bunch of print stuff there. And he actually used to do all my art prints. And it was awesome because he would print on canvas or on aluminum, which looked great. And then he would do an acrylic coat on them, which those things are just it's beautiful when it works. But there is an art to printing, and your local camera guys will know who the best of the best are for sure.
I'm sure there were people yelling at whatever their device is hearing this when I just make it sound like it's not a big deal, because it is. It's, again, just.
Well, if it's art, for sure, right? And then even the you were talking about weddings. I know wedding photographers who have connections with artisan bookmakers, and so they'll have there's an old person there folding pages, steaming them, and using a sewing machine, and actually binding books with photos. Oh my God. I think it's fantastic. We've got so much local talent.
I've heard some wedding photographers rail on what they call, I want to say, like shoot and burn or something, back when you would burn a CD, and it's not that anymore, but they had there's a term like that, something and burn, which meant just giving them the digital copies. And they were saying that's the most horrible idea, and lots of negative attitude about it, because it's not a good option.
Hey, they'll go get printed at Walmart, and all of a sudden they get crappy photos, and they'll say, well, this doesn't look good. And it's because, they haven't calibrated their printers.
I guess not every wedding that you photograph is a wedding of a photographer, but the one time I did that, I wanted the digital, but that was different. I also said, hey, you didn't click the chromatic aberration checkbox for this photo. They were good. They were really good, but it was just a couple of them that you probably don't want to be the photographer for a photographer all the time.
No, definitely not.
What else do we have from Elaine? We hit a bunch of things, and as you can tell, Elaine, man, these are all, what I consider to be, when people say that's a good question. Like, a lot of people, when they're being interviewed or they're like a important person of some sort, they're stalling when they say that. That's not a good question. They're stalling. But a good question means there's a million answers. There are a million answers, or it's not a simple answer, or it's an it depends answer, because everything in photography falls into that. Like, you can do so many things, and no one should tell you what not to do. Okay, outside of a few things, I guess, but
point the camera the right way, right?
Point it at yourself. Take the lens cap off.
I have all these nose smudges on my camera lens. I don't know why.
She asked to use color enhance or not. I'm not sure. That could be. It's one of those things. It depends, and sometimes I can't. I'm getting a sense that she's not like a high pro level here. So a lot of times in your software, even if it's on a device like on iPhones and stuff, they have an auto enhance that usually is really good. I mean, it's auto, but it's good. And if one of the things about the questions of I'm getting stuck with myself. I'm doing a Jeff Goldblum thing where he gets all confused. If you have a specific deliberate reason to go in and edit, then do that. Otherwise, using auto is not a bad place to start, and it just depends on the situation. I'd like to go through for those kind of commodity type real estate photos. I use auto first, and I hope I get really, really close or even good enough before I go in and do it. If I'm working on an art piece that I have some specific ideas and I went into it with a specific plan and I shot it a certain way knowing I was going to do that, then I want to be really specific and deliberate about my edits. But by all means, if it works, it works. So use enhanced auto if you can.
It's funny. I remember I was shooting private jet interiors. Shoot, I wish I could remember the other photographer's name. And so I went up to him and I said, "Look, you know what?" He actually got the client and he brought me in to do the 360s of the place. And I was doing on my, what was it? I had a Canon 5D Mark III with a Zeiss 15mm 2.8 on it. It was a beautiful lens. But because he was shooting the photos for it, I went up to him and I said, "Okay, so we're both shooting Canon. That makes it easy. You're shooting with Canon lenses. I've got the Zeiss one on here, so the colors are going to look a little different. But send me whatever your white balance is that you use to process your photos, and I'll do the same." And it's like, "What?" I said, "Well, we want the colors to match. So just when you're done shooting, just send me your settings so that we make sure that the 360 is set at the same levels as your stills." And he's like, "What are you looking for?" I'm like, I just want to get the color right." And his response was, "Oh, we are just going to make it look moody." And I thought, "What?" He's like, "Make it look moody." And I thought, holy shit, this guy's not, we're not, like, I'm going on a completely, like, scientific or, like, mathematical kind of calculation, just going from a pure numbers side, but he was going from a more of an emotional side. Like, what does this make you, how does it make you feel? And color does that. It makes you feel things. If it's, cooler or warmer or anything, it evokes emotion. So whenever I hear anybody say, "Well, what do you think about the color?" It's like, my initial reaction is to say it looks too green, right? But then I have to stop and I say, no, I have to talk about, like, how does it make me feel? And it's as soon as I started talking about color that way, it was really interesting. Like, for example, I did this with some art images where I said, if you make, I saw an image and it was fairly desaturated, and I said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "You know what? It makes me feel nostalgic. It makes me feel like I'm looking at something from the past that's old, and it's bringing back memories of when I was a kid, because it had that faded photo kind of look, and so it brought back. It made me feel like it was from the past, and made me feel like I was trying to grasp onto something that was nostalgic. It's a neat thing. But then if you see something that's really bright, it feels like it's right there, right in front of you, or maybe it's like almost futuristic, right? So
I agree. I was just having a conversation about the trend in, well, real estate, not photography, but just in real estate, where everything is just, someone called it mono white. And they were noticing a maybe trend. Who was this? I think I was reading it. Maybe it was on a Facebook group or something, that they're starting to notice more color and depth and interesting interiors compared to before. And that would be great from our point of view, right, Rob? Like, there's just all this white that's just too much.
Yeah, but, no, definitely.
Let's before we run out of time, let's make sure we include. I put one more question down for today,
Okay.
and these kind of represent questions that we get. But Lance in Buffalo, and I'm wondering, Lance, which Buffalo, New York or North Dakota? That's it's a joke in my own head. Is it better to under or overexpose in a tricky lighting situation? So,
Ooh.
I think I have a. Okay, it always depends, but I could make most common. I would say to underexpose. The reason being that if you really overexpose, then the highlights get that we call burned out. They're just lost, and they can't be recovered. Where if you go the other way, you can recover more in the shadows. It has its own problems too, but if I had to pick one, but what I do is I don't over or underexpose anything. I get the full dynamic range every time.
But that's, yeah.
Because I bracket.
Yeah.
But again, this is because I've been doing it for years. I bracket for most of the things that I do for work. So at this point, I almost always bracket, even if I'm traveling or something, because why not? It's just bang, 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 and then I can do different things with it. But if it's a tricky situation, I recommend that. Set the auto bracketing and capture more bright and more dark areas. But if I had to pick one, which is better, I'd say underexpose a little bit. Other people disagree.
Okay. I am going to disagree. All right.
In a depending on the situation, I would disagree with myself. So yeah.
So, so you know me. I like to go at a lot of this from. I like to learn the science behind things, and then go to the practicality of it. So, one of the things that I had read about a long time ago is this concept of ETTR, exposed to the right, and
for sure.
The idea is that if you look...
How 2002 of you.
2002? Oh my god, I think take a look. There's articles that were written in 2018 about this, so it's new.
No, it's a great common rule, yeah.
Yeah, because what ETTR says is that if you break down the lighting spectrum, there is more information that is held on the higher end than on the lower end. And so, the amount of data that's in your darkest stuff is less than what you would find in, say, your highlights. So it's easier to pull down than it is to pull up your lighting. So
unless you reach the point that I mentioned where the highlights are burned out and just gone.
Yeah. No, if you clip, you're clipped.
There's no clear answer about which one is better, because if you do expose where you have to recover, okay, the shadows are more recoverable than the highlights, but the noise is exponentially higher in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go to recover them, the noise is going to come out. So there's no good answer. I'm just saying.
But if anyone wants to nerd out on this stuff, definitely look up ETTR, or exposed to the right, and check out all that stuff, because the science behind it is pretty cool. In practicality, whenever I shoot, I am, let's see now, where do I pushing, pulling? I usually do a lot of that when I'm out shooting events, people, things where you can't bracket, right? And so for those, I'm using my Fuji cameras, because the dynamic range on those are fantastic. And I'm sure that the new Sony A7 IV is fantastic too, but I can't afford that quite yet. I'm still on my Fuji X-T4, but that thing is amazing. I'll just go around, click, 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 and yes, you've got a whole lot of dynamic range on there. So it is easier for me to pull up that, because I usually like to have my skies quite blue and I like to have them quite blue. So to do that, it's better to shoot a little bit underexposed.
Well, let me give the answer I heard. I wish I could attribute this. I can't remember it, but I do remember it was at a Photoshop World, and I was listening to a speaker, and I just don't remember who it was a long time ago. and they said if you have a person that you're photographing and it's way too bright, how do you expose for the person? His answer was correctly.
Of course.
And I just thought, we all go through all this figuring out what to do here and there. And, well, if you're photographing a person, what are you going to do? Over or underexpose the person? No, expose for the person, right? And if your background's blown out, it's blown out. So you're not in the studio. You're not controlling everything. So I did like that. He said it with a bit of an attitude. Correctly. But, for someone like me and maybe Lance here, we're struggling, and maybe more at the time for me. Maybe I'm still struggling. I don't know. But you're struggling, and you have all these questions, and you want to make things work better. And another thing, if you have that problem, change the situation. Grab the person. I'm just thinking of a situation here. A person's outside. I don't know. Grab them. Pull them under the edge of the shade. Under something that's there. Get someone to hold something up high above them. If you want to change it, but expose them correctly either way. So take control and make us. You might have already thought about the background to move them, and you've probably thought about the angle to make them look well, and you've probably thought about the pose well, why don't you think about adjusting the sun a little bit somehow with either a scrim or a tree, or put them somewhere else. So lots of options with it always depends. So
one of the things that I liked was I used to use bracketing for a lot of my like when I shot my first two weddings, I shot everything bracketed. And it sounds weird to shoot a wedding bracketed, but the reason for it was when you shoot it bracketed, and I did like it was a pretty wide range. It was like 202, so like 2 EV minus 2 EV plus 2 EV and a center. And what I found was that because I was just learning at the time, and when I did that, you get these different looks, right? Like if you shoot something underexposed, yes, you can get that like shadowy kind of look where the person's in the shadow, and then you see the light doing this. It's like that silver lining kind of look, and it's a cool shot. Whereas other ones, it looks really good where the person is slightly overexposed, and then the background is completely overexposed and bright white, and it just makes it look like this angelic photo. So if you're starting out and you're just trying, why not?
The bracketing in a wedding could be what. Remember Rick Salmon was on, and he said you could use bracketing for the old-fashioned purpose that it used to be used for, even with film cameras. And remember what he said?
Yeah.
BLH, right? Bracket
like hell. Do it.
And that was just to try to get. In this case, you might just get more options for later when you look at them.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. Digital age is fantastic because we can throw out a whole lot without wasting all of our money. Right? It's not like the days of print where. Jeez, we
listen. Let's take a little intermezzo here.
All right.
We have a special guest question asker in the live in the studio. We call him Little Pepper.
When did you call me that?
Just now, because this is public and people are. So, did you have a question?
Do pictures use pixels?
Use pixels, yeah. Because let's see, Little Pepper's coming at it from like a video game kind of standpoint where there are lots of pixels involved, and because when you look at a photo, when you look at all these things, it's made up of millions of pixels, like so many you couldn't count. But that's because the camera sees the light. And do you know how many pixels are in cameras? Like between 10 and like 50 million.
Then why don't they have it like in between 50 or 49 million and 50 million?
I don't know, because they're smart it seems to work the best. Like mine has like 45.8 or something like that, I think. I'm not sure exactly why, but
Yeah.
do you know what colors pixels are made up of?
Didn't you just say it? Colors
No, but which colors each pixel has?
different, I guess.
Just 3. Red, green, blue.
Mm-hmm.
And everything gets created from red, green, blue.
Yeah, white does. At least white does.
That'd be just nothing.
Yep.
You can find it on projectors.
Sometime, see, he's gonna get subjected to things like additive and subtractive color and color theory, and he's already got a great eye for color and understands complementary colors and some design principles. And
You know, it's funny when we're you probably saw this when you're in school. They teach you that the primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. And now your dad's telling you,
in Canada,
and your dad's telling you now that it's red, blue, and green. So what happened with that? Right?
it happened with that. Do you know?
That's a good question. I really don't know. I don't know why they made.
This is one of those things where, well, first of all, we're running long, so we should end. But this is one of those things where I think I know, but I don't feel confident enough to put it out there, and I could be wrong. Plus, I'm just not that good at explaining it since I don't know. But I'm gonna look. I'll check it out because I'm remembering things too. And like I was saying before, like some years when I was doing a lot more technical side of all this. I think I would have been able to belt it out, but I just kind of got in my groove and been doing more of the same things. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to be back getting these questions and talking about it because I love learning by discussing. That's one of my things that ways I learn the best. Do you have any other things you wanted to add before your special appearance is gone? Since you're up late,
Do pixels have pixels inside them?
do pixels have pixels inside them? I'm gonna go with no.
Huh.
Like they're all made up of those colors, and some of them have like a depth. Like there's some sensors can have
8-bit, 10-bit.
Well, there's some of those sensors that were experimenting with the pixels being under other pixels, so they get more colors at them. But that's over my head.
Yeah.
Are you also 8-bit?
I think I'm 32-bit. I'm HDR all the way.
Okay.
8-bit Minecraft but most photos you see,
I thought
Are
Minecraft
8-bit.
was 16 by 16.
I think it
Oh, no.
started out 8-bit, but you're talking about how many dots in the
Oh, wait,
blocks.
no.
But
Oh wait, no, 16 is like one of those texture packs
Yeah.
that blows up your PC immediately.
they made more. Yeah, it's a different kind of 8 and 16-bit since we're talking about photos. But yeah,
I know.
All right,
That
dude,
kind of
let's-
technicality is.
let's all since we're all here, let's end this on a good note. Let's see. So those those that asked questions if you have any follow-ups, let us know at questions@photofocus.com, or you can even go to photofocus.com/questions. Just remember those two things. See, now I have to edit because between Rob's crackling and your breaking
Am I?
the rules with.
Wah.
All right, well, let's.
Okay, bye. Can I?
Well, you're just gonna go just like that.
Now you have to
You're just gonna go
edit.
just like that.
Yeah, now you have to edit.
Oops. Now I have to edit. You're right. Well, at least I can take a mental break and just think what I want to do next. So let's say. Okay, so there's my done editing. 59 minutes exactly to edit.
Perfect.
All right, so let's wrap up here. And first, our special guest. Thank you, Little Pepper, for coming. Have a good night.
Bye, little pepper.
And all right, well, that was a little all over the place. All right, thanks for the couple people who watched us live in the middle of the night. That was cool. And shout out Devin. I see you were watching over there in France. Thanks, Eason, for commenting. And Rob,
Thank you for having me as always and keeping me up. And I think I'm gonna go crack another beer and get back to work here. But always a lot of fun. And again, thank you, Tamron. I am gonna have to try and get a chance to go out and try one of these cameras or these lenses because it looks fantastic. And if anyone wants to send me an A7 IV to play with the Tamron, I'm all for it. Just DM me. You'll find me at robmoroto.com or at robmoroto, wherever social media is.
Ditto on send me some gear to try. And I'm at ronpepper.com. Now, once again, thank you to Photomatics for also sponsoring. And we will be back. We have a show on Thursdays. We'll do the roundtable again in a couple of weeks, and we'll be back for another Q&A show. So send us your questions, and the questions that get featured are the ones that are clear.
Yes. And so if you can, for anyone that wants to do something really cool, have your children read the questions for you and then send that in. We'd love to hear that.
Please keep the Spanish and the Japanese to a minimum, but we will take it. And French, you said.
Yes, but it's Canadian French, so unfortunately, it's not that good.
Well, at least you'll understand it. You'll understand it better than I'll understand the Spanish, but that's still fun. I just enjoy that. It's just fun for me. It's a break. If you have Spanish questions for Photomatics, I answer those at support@hdrsoft.com. Those go to me. All right. Well, we'll see you in a few weeks. Send us your questions. If there's enough questions, we'll add a show. There's a Thursday that's currently kind of empty, and we can add a bonus show. So just send it to us, or we'll do some interviews maybe too. All right. That's plenty for today. I hope everybody got some good tips. And don't be afraid to also, in the comments on the blog post or in YouTube or wherever you're getting this, send us some feedback or some other ideas, anything you like. All right. And with that, I will say, see you next time. Adios.
Good night, everyone.